you in the Netherlands?
Yes, I'm in the Netherlands in a city called Venlo. It's actually pretty close to Amsterdam, the city where I grew up, and I was born and raised, and I stayed. Kind of like it. It's like living in a small city, like traveling the world. You get to see all the big cities, and you get to have the hectic and the craziness. And then when I get back home, I just want to have that simpler life, you know?
It's nice, man. Yeah, I feel like, especially for what we do, like I feel like there's always the pull of the bigger city that you feel when you're young and coming up. But it really does seem like eventually everyone kind of figures out that they need that balance, you know?
Yeah, and there's another thing that a lot of people move to the big city to, you know, chase their dreams or achieve a career or whatever, or follow like an education. But like I did it all from here, so there was no necessity to move to another city to be close to a fire or whatever. So it's, I guess if I would have had made it from here, I would have moved probably. You know,
right.
Yeah, but
yeah. I mean, it's interesting now that you say that because you know in the States, it's always oh, you got to move to LA or oh, you got to move to New York, whatever it is. That's the pressure. Is it the same in the Netherlands? Like, is there a thing you're told that like, oh, you got to move to Amsterdam or wherever?
Absolutely, yeah. Amsterdam is the city for these kind of things, especially the music industry. So yeah, basically all my friends that came from the same city here, like Jim from Yellow Claw, and another friend, he's a pretty big DJ in the Netherlands as well. They moved to Amsterdam to achieve their goals. So they did it actually, and a lot of people I know moved. So it's the thing. It's the same as in the US.
Okay, so you're out there. You're still. Is it actually the town you grew up in? Is where you're at? Do you have family out there still?
Yes. All my family is here, and it's a small city. It's 60,000 people live here, and it's so. But for the Netherlands, it is not a super small city. It's because we don't have those big cities as in the US. I mean, Amsterdam only has like 1.2 million people. And so this is 60,000, which is like a medium city in the Netherlands. But still, it has that village kind of culture. You know, everybody knows each other, and it's like all the people live really close to each other. All the houses are built, next to each other like that. And so it's like I love that. I love that. When I walk out the door, people are like, "Hey, what's up?" You know everyone. You know the cashier at your local grocery store, and you know everybody by name. I like that. I like to live like that.
Yeah, I get that, man. And it's like growing up there, and like you were saying, obviously it's just a smaller country than the US, but the Netherlands is so known for dance music. Like so many well-known dance music producers have come out of there. There's a culture of it. So let me ask you, as growing up there, were you aware, what was dance music to you when you were growing up, when you were younger? Like, how aware were you? Was it a thing that like all kids knew about? Like, what was the culture at the time?
Yeah, I mean, when I grew up, I was born in the 80s, but my youth was, in the 90s, and our radio was stacked with like Eurodance and hardstyle and hardcore, and I was very well aware of the coming up of like Thunderdome and IDT and Sensation and all these crazy ass parties. But we had like huge dance hits on the radio, all since the 90s, and so it is definitely a big culture here, and it's not a niche. It's never been really. It's like it's always been like a major player in the music industry, the dance culture. And even clubbing and all those kind of things is very, very, very evolved, like compared to other countries. I think one of the reasons for that is that like our government has have subsidies. So we have like these local venues. We call them pop podiums, and it's like a place that they get like it's built by the government, and then they put people in, creative people that run it. But I'm an artist, for example. I want to throw a party. I could just go in, and it's like I need a budget for a party, and I get a certain amount of money. I can book artists. I can promote myself. I can evolve, so.
Yeah.
And I think that is the a great foundation for a lot of the successes of DJs. You see the Dutch DJs, because like you have to imagine, if you're like 15 years, 16 years old right now, you can just get money from the government to throw a party, and there's no questions asked. It's not like there's no profit, you give the money back. No, it's just, you did a great job. And I think that's one of the main reasons why we have such a strong dance culture.
That makes total sense. I mean, it makes me think about in Canada, they have I don't know if it's the same thing, but they have a lot of arts grants that I know musicians and other artists, filmmakers, all that sort of thing can apply for. And I think it's similar, where it's not that hard to get, and you can get kind of a smaller amount of money for like a smaller project, like throwing a party, that kind of thing. And I always wished there was more of that in the U.S. Because it's weird. Like the U.S. is sort of, I think, just because of our size and like financial status and power and all that. Of course, our culture exports all around the world, but it's weird when you live here. And I'm sure you've toured all over and this too. I'm sure you've seen it. It doesn't always feel like you're as supported as locals from other countries in their countries. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I noticed that as well in the US. Absolutely. And there's also like between labels, between festival organizations, between artists themselves. There's also like a rivalry, I feel, more than in other countries. But that can also result in bigger successes. So it's not like per se bad that the culture is like that. Because you get like the city against the city. You get like a label against, we want to be bigger next year than them, and you get like a competition. That's a U.S. thing as well. I kind of like that too. I prefer the European way though, but
yeah, no, I know what you mean. I mean, there's plenty of success stories of people who sort of through competition and through the struggle of it ended up getting further than maybe they thought they would. You're absolutely right, and I'm not even really saying that one is better than the other, but it was just. Once I started realizing that some other countries did that, it's like it had never even crossed my mind, But
absolutely.
I was also born in the 80s. And so a lot of what you're talking about, I started DJing in the late 90s, and I was playing a lot of, hardstyle and gabber, and that's it. Like that initially drew me. So all the things you're talking about, Thunderdome and all that, is sort of what I was looking at in the 90s, wishing I was there. Did you end up going to any of those parties? How did you start getting involved?
Well, the first party, like I was a DJ at a local bar, and I just played like all round music. I played hip hop, but also like Dutch folk music, like everything, like just whatever the people wanted. And then on Mondays when we were closed, we would go to Belgium, and there was a club. It was called the Versus. And in that club, that was the first time I went to like a club with club music. So I've been to like big raves and like hardstyle events, but that was the first time I was in like a setting that was different. It was new to me, and there was this. It was very basic if you compare it to a show right now, but they had like this confetti blast from the ceiling, and that was like next level. Everybody was waiting all night for that blast, and it happened, and I saw the dancers dancing, and like the confetti coming down. I was like, dude, I want to become a house DJ. Like that was like my big moment. I realized that was something I wanted to be. And then I went back home to my city, and we have like a local record store, which still exists and still is the biggest independent record store in the Netherlands. And they have a huge vinyl department. And I just went in. I was like, damn, I need to get this vinyl. And I just started buying vinyl, and I started playing those vinyls in that bar. You have to imagine there were like guys like mid-40s. Right. They wanted to hear like the pop songs, and I was just coming in with all this cool house music. So everybody's like, what the fuck is this guy doing? But I actually learned how to DJ on vinyl in front of that crowd. So that's basically how it started. So the love of dance music was always there, but not in a club way, like in a clubby way. And it was more like the commercial side of it that really appealed to me, or like the big show elements, or like Thunderdome, big productions. That was amazing, but not really as an artist. It was more like a spectator. And I think the club sound was that really drew me in as an artist.
Yeah, again, it's funny. I didn't really think I was going to be drawing all these parallels between Europe and the US, but again, you're making me think about. On this podcast, we always talk about sort of the EDM explosion in America, which is only in the last 10, 15 years, really. But then, and with that's all the big production, the LED walls, the pyro, all of that. But you just made me realize that, there's certain promoters and events in Europe that have been doing that for so much longer. We sort of think of it as something that just started happening here when all the money came in. But that's really interesting, man. Yeah, it's cool to hear you were thinking about like the ideas of bigger productions and how a show could be that early on.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, like the parties like Sensation White. I'm not sure if you ever heard of that one. That's an ID&T show.
I know Sensation, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. They travel around the world. I don't think, are they still doing it? I'm not sure.
I don't know. It's a good question.
Yeah, I don't know. But that was like, 50,000 people in the biggest stadium in Holland and in Amsterdam. And it was just everybody wearing white, crazy production. You had like the mega mix where these songs were like in the show aspect of it. It was really impressive. And you're right. It's like, this is one of those things that, I don't know if it's really started in the size of it in the Netherlands, but we were one of the first to do it like that. And I'm really proud to be part of that, culture.
Yeah.
That is part of my heritage, my DNA. It's
it's interesting, man. Not to cut you off, but thinking about your music as well, talking about sort of being part of the tradition of it and the heritage of it. I mean, I've always loved your music, but I've always found it interesting because I think it pulls from a lot of different influences culturally. So, I mean, obviously you're making house music, but then to me, there was always a strong UK influence as well. So it's like, house music born in America, exported over to the UK, who kind of turned it into this whole other thing. And then, some of the harder styles of dance music coming from where you're at. And I always felt like you pulled all of them together in a really interesting, unique way. And I don't know that I have an exact question, but I guess my question is like, when you were younger, starting to get into this, figuring out what you liked, what you didn't like, the kinds of music you wanted to DJ, bringing the house records into the local bar, all of that. Was there something about the UK side of it that stood out to you? Like, how did you start putting together the influences that were going to become your sound?
I think it started with a label called Dubsided. I'm not sure if you ever heard of that label.
Switch, man.
Absolutely. And those artists, Jesse Rose, Solid Groove, Sinden, Switch, all those guys, I just thought that was so creative what they were doing. And they were not making the songs in order everyone could play them. They were just making shit that they liked. And sometimes you bought like a vinyl and it had like a main single on it, but on the B side there were like 2 songs, but like super weird arrangements and like not even playable. But I really loved that, and I was always very interesting. And they had like jazz influences, but also like UK bass or garage influences, but also something new. There was something new in there. I think that era of UK music is definitely had the most impact on me as an artist. And I didn't even produce back then, so I was still just a DJ,
right?
And I think the combination of that and just, listening to a lot of Dutch music as well, Dutch house, you had like Sneakers and Nope is Dope. Those are like parties in the Netherlands back in the days. And they had like the dirty house, all those sounds, and like all these influences combined with like the Dubsided influence. And then, it's just a cocktail of all these things. But also in that perspective, like the electro sound, electro house, all those things have a big impact on me as well, like Voice Noise and Electro Love and all those artists from back then. Like I was,
I was
I went
listening
hard.
to your new album, and I actually wrote down that a couple tracks on there
Mm,
reminded me sort of the old, blog house electro
mm,
days. Some of them felt kind of, in the lineage of like old Crookers records,
yeah,
that kind of
mm,
thing. That
absolutely.
yeah, that I thought was really cool. I mean, the new album too is great, man, and we'll talk about it plenty. But yeah, to me, it was one thing I liked about it was that there was sort of what I felt to be nods to older styles and sounds that you had sort of update, taking like these older influences and updating them and making them your own a little bit, which I think can be a tricky thing to do. So I don't know, man. I don't know how much of that was intentional, but I really liked those influences on there.
Well, I love to hear that. Yeah, it's not really intentional. I really went in this album like just to make cool shit, and I basically always do that. I never really have a plan when it comes to producing song. But I always start with a sound and end up making something. It's just an unconscious influence, I guess. So the things you hear, like the updated, sounds and like it's all unintentional. It's of course I make conscious decisions in the studio, like where to push a final song towards, but it's never been like, oh, I'm going to make an album and I want to reinvent a certain genre or something, like, that's never, it's not never like that. It's just all these influences come in and I just keep pushing it towards something that's good. At least what I
that
feel.
of course, that makes total sense. And it makes me want to ask you as well, do you ever think about sort of where you fit in, or like, do you consider yourself to be part of any particular scene or style as far as dance music goes?
It's a good question. I think the fans would say, "Yeah, I'm bass house." That's what I think most people would say. But I don't really see it like that. Like I think I have a lot of bass house songs, and especially in the beginning, like the first EPs, that was like clearly bass house. But I really deviated from that really fast, and I would say I'm just I want to be an island. I want to have that Moksi world is just something that people have to come towards, and there's no. I mean, it's really hard to like to name like a genre or like a label that I fit in perfect. Like it's like all. I want to be an island where I can do all these things I want to do and have that freedom. And if I have to give it a name, I would say house music in general. Like that's the foundation of it all. Yeah. And then on top of that, I just try all these different kind of things. And
yeah, I mean, it makes sense.
What would you say?
I mean, I would probably just say house music as well, man. I mean, despite the fact that I'm the one who just asked you the question, I think it's kind of dumb to split hairs too much about the genres and the names of it. I mean, even the phrase bass house, I think you and I have both been in the game long enough. That's had like a few different definitions already. And I think it'll have more in the future. So it's, to me, pledging allegiance to a particular subgenre, it's fine, but it doesn't really matter.
No, right.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I don't know, man. I don't know if you're this way, but I think about artists I like kind of with DJ brain, where I'm thinking less about what it actually sounds like and more kind of what it feels like and how it connects to other things I like or other artists I like. And, so for you, I guess, if you're asking me, what do I think about you? It's really that mix of influences for me where I tend to think of you on the heavier side, although the new album, I think, gets away from that at certain points. But my thing is usually with heavier music, it ends up being a little less funky. Like I think a lot of people who choose to make heavier, aggressive music kind of just go for the aggression and the energy. And I think one reason I really like your music is you have those heavier elements in a lot of your songs, but then there's also sort of this funk. A lot of it is a little quirky, a little like just off, and where you're kind of going for more of a rhythm or a feel rather than just straight kind of in your face aggression. And for me, I always tend to like the hybrid sounds like that a little more.
Yeah, I feel you. Definitely. Yeah, there's always a certain fun aspect to my songs. Like I always want to add that something like a bouncy element, or like, and that's like that's the influence from Dubsided. I mean, that's that that fun, that open format thing, and I love that.
Dude, I mean, I love that you said earlier, talking about Dubsided, that sometimes they weren't even really thinking about whether you could play these songs in your sets or not, which is completely true. But I think there's lessons to be taken from that too, because we still talk about, they were so influential. And even though some of those names, for people who just got into dance music, maybe you don't know them all, but those names influenced all of, the current crop of really big artists in such a profound way. There's something to be said for, that sort of unbridled creativity where you kind of don't care and you're just doing it because it's cool to you.
Yeah. It's unfortunate though that the industry right now doesn't have a lot of room for that, and people's attention span either as well, so you have to really take a risk doing that right now. That's a bigger risk than back in the days.
I think you're right about that. Yeah, I think you're right about that. And I mean, that's another kind of bigger question is I feel like eventually that has to change. And I think everyone's sort of just trying to figure out how and when that's going to happen, whether it's some new platform coming along that just happens to be, sort of like SoundCloud was for a long time. Yeah. Where it's a little more chaotic and a little more Wild West feeling, or whether it's, just some artist or some collective that comes along that's so out of the box that, enough people gravitate towards it. I mean, let me ask you this, man, because, we're talking about house music, and the new album, I mean, has a wide range of house music sounds and styles. And how do you feel about house right now? Because house is certainly having a moment, but, for you, who's sort of been there the whole time through some ups and downs for the genre, how does it look to you? How do you feel about how it's doing right now?
I think it's great that it became, I wouldn't say, I mean, it is basically mainstream now, but I love to see that the artists that are actually on the mainstream forefront, that they're actually still making great decisions, like quality wise. So I think the genre is evolving in a positive way. That's like the how I see it, but how I feel it. Like when I listen to some of the songs, I think sometimes it's a little dull for my taste. I like the openness in house music, and there's a certain groove, and specifically in tech house, sometimes I feel like, okay, come on, when is this gonna pop off in a set, or like it's all very like, I don't know, and there's no judgmental thing about this artist because I think it's really quality that they're making, but it's not my taste. But I'm really happy it's happening. I'm really happy that the genre is actually actually sent in the middle of it all right now, and actually evolving in a positive way. So I think that's really great.
Yeah, and I agree with you about the tech house thing. I think part of what happened there is, the Chris Lakes and the Fishers of the world are doing so well, and they're fantastic. But then it's sort of what happens in any genre that blows up, that so many imitators tried to follow that. And I think the music industry, from the corporate side of it, they just see something that works and they try to make more of it. And it's still, super, super oversaturated. But I guess that's a good problem to have, because you're right that for the most part, the people who are getting a lot of success are actually the talented people making cool stuff. And that doesn't always happen.
No, exactly. That's exciting. That's like, that gives me hope. So that the genre will, keep on evolving in a good way. I really, that song that was released recently, like Odd Mob with Lose Control or Losing Control. What's it?
Yeah.
That's a great example of like, that's how I want to see it happening. That's boundary shifting. That's like, there's something new going on right there. And that's really interesting. There's a bigger energy, like a and that connects better with my taste. But when I heard that one, I saw a video of, I think he was playing at Brooklyn Mirage. I think that video was like, damn, with like the fire from the sides. It was just a perfect video. Like that song, it's gonna pop off, but it's already popped off.
It's doing big stuff. It's funny, man. I had Odd Mob on this podcast a couple months before that song came out, and I think we would have had a very different conversation if it had been a couple months after, you know? Because at the time, he was just, I mean, super nice guy, but yeah, it was just him in his bedroom in Australia, and you know, he was just kind of like, yeah, I just hang out and I make some weird music. You know, it's going okay. And now I think we would have a very different conversation.
Yeah, crazy.
Yeah, nice really cool. Dude, though. No, shout out to Atma, man. But man, so for you, okay, as long as we're talking about the new album and talking about sort of the not revival, but new energy coming into house music. This album, of course, obviously is the first album you're doing as sort of a solo act.
Absolutely.
Was there any difference for you creatively coming into this, knowing that it's a solo project now? And does that change the way you write music? Does it change the way you approach, you know, how you present the project?
Yeah, absolutely. Like creatively, nothing really changed for me because I've always been the producer, and you know, so that's always been my thing. And but I think this project in general was part of course, a rebranding. You know, and when you've always been a duo and someone quits, you have to tell your new story. So the goal was for this album is to show people that I'm still here, you know, that they don't have to worry, because I understand that some people had worries, you know, like, okay, what's going on now? He's going alone, and how is this going to look and sound? And so then the first project you're doing, you have to do it the right way. So there was a lot of, I would say pressure, but not in a negative way, to make it work, to make it really something I can be proud of. And I think the first reactions I've noticed from the fans that listen to it, they're really happy with it and they really enjoy it. So I think that plan succeeded. But of course, there is an element of there is a change, you know. So you have to, when you're making this album, the process was like, okay, I don't fuck it up, you know?
Well, I guess the question is, how are you with pressure and, you know, stress and all that? Because I think some people sort of thrive in high pressure environments. And then I think other creatives, you know, really like it to be sort of the less stress, the better as far as their creative process goes.
I feel like the stress or expectations or pressure are a great motivator for me, because then it just has to work. You know, it works for me. I think in times where everything's going well, and there's you have your success, and then there's no incentive to push to bigger things. You know, I feel like you have to have that feeling of, it's now or never. You have to have that all the time, for my feeling. Like, it's, you know, this next thing I'm going to do has to work. Otherwise, you know, everything will go to shit. Like that feeling I tell myself, I kind of lie to myself about it. Of course, the reality is it's not like that, you know?
Yeah.
But I tell myself to keep myself, you know, alert, and I push myself like that.
It makes sense, man. And you're not alone in that. I think there's a lot of successful people with that mindset. And I should probably say, too, for the people listening who don't know, the other member, Diego, who left the group, was the MC. And, you know, so for people who don't know, just establishing those roles, that basically you were always the producer for the group. He was the MC for the group. And was it the kind of thing when you were a duo? What was that writing process like? I mean, was there sort of a creative back and forth as far as the making of the older albums?
Yeah, absolutely. That, of course, he was involved because we were a duo, but it was mainly that I made something, sent it to him for feedback to see what he thinks. He had some ideas. I was like, okay, that's a cool idea. That isn't, and you know, just kind of back and forth. And especially when you play a show together, you play some new songs, and after a show, there's always like feedback or like, you know, like evaluation. How was the show? Did that song really work? Is it done yet? So there was definitely an influence, of course. So I don't want to make it smaller than, or like smaller
No,
than,
yeah, and I wasn't trying to do that either.
No.
Yeah.
But I'm just trying to emphasize that. No, but
Yeah.
because it definitely had an influence on it, of course, and that changed now. So, and that's something, of course, I had to get used to in the beginning, because usually when you're in the studio making something, then you have like someone that you can send someone over to, like real quick, like, what do you think of this? Like real quick, and then someone that understands where Moksi is about, and that is gone. That mirror, or like that reflection. How do you say that?
Reflection, I think, is exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, so that changed, but I have a lot of other people around me that that can fill in that gap. So that's great.
Yeah. Was it a surprise when Diego said he wanted to leave? Like, I read the thing he posted on your Instagram that he just wanted to, focus on a solo career and all of that. But I don't know any of the details about that. I mean, was this a thing you saw coming? Was it a surprise?
No, I think I saw it coming. Yeah, for a while, and we discussed it for a while as well. So it wasn't a surprise. It didn't come out of nowhere, and I really think he made a great decision for himself. And of course, I hated to see him go, because we had a great time together, and we still have there's no conflict or anything. So we're like it's bittersweet, but I rather see him do this than become unhappy, and and then it wouldn't be good for anyone. So this was a great decision, very mature decision, and I applaud it. So
it's great to have that perspective, man, because I think just if I think about myself in that situation, it's just scary to think about, a project that's working changing like that. Like, if I were in your shoes, I think I'm sure I would feel the same as far as supporting your friend and all that, but I think there would be a part of me that just be like, God damn, like I did not need this,
Of course, those thoughts enter my mind as well. Sometimes they still do. Sometimes, like shit, it would have been great if you could. But it is what it is, and you have to see things as they are. And the fact is that he started to become more and more out of touch with what we were doing, and he wanted to move into a different direction, and that's the last thing I want, to work with someone that doesn't believe in what we're doing or doesn't feel it anymore. So this was the best decision out of those two. So, but of course you're on top of the world, and then you're kind of like, come on, not now, bro. But,
I guess that's the story of life, though, man. In a lot of ways, it always happens that way. It's never perfect forever. And now that I say this too, I mean, I think about your whole career, both as a duo and now as solo, and you've always been a good collaborator. You've always, a lot of your songs have been collaborations, and you always work with really interesting, talented people. And you've definitely, obviously, continued that on this album, which has tons of great collabs.
Absolutely. I really love working with other people, especially when it's someone that doesn't really necessarily connect real well with the sound to begin with. Like, you go into the studio and just trying to find a common ground. And I really like working with people because I always want to keep on learning from them as well, Even from those, like on the new album, Moksi Crew album, there are a lot of talents on that album. A lot of guys that maybe did one or two releases, but those are guys that are from my city, like talented guys, and they do something, have something that I'm like, oh shit, I want to learn that. I want to see what they're up to. And I never judge a collab on profile. I think a lot of guys do that. They don't want to do a collab with talented people because they don't have a profile or it doesn't look big or whatever. I never had that. I never do that. I just want to work with people that are interesting, that have a great vision or good energy, or a dream or whatever, something that, that I can tap into and just make something fun. Yeah, absolutely. I want to keep on doing that in the future as well.
Yeah. And I mean, there's so many names we could talk about of people you've worked with on the album. I really liked the the Gentleman's Club collab you had on there. I like that opener with Mike Cervello, who I've always thought he was another one who, I don't know him at all, but he just seems like such a broad range of stuff he can make, and just such an interesting, he's always making interesting choices, I think, kind of similar to you, like fun choices, unexpected choices.
Absolutely. And he's a great guy. So he's great to work with in the studio as well. He's a dear friend as well. So I think I have like 4 or 5 songs with him already.
Yeah. And Chocolate Puma as well, right? You've done a bunch of stuff with Chocolate Puma?
I think I have three songs. Yeah, 3. I think Hippo, We Lose Nothing, and We Are in This Motherfucker. Yeah, I think those 3.
Yeah, great. I really that motherfucker track. Is that the most recent one? I really like that tune a lot, man.
Yeah, but it was also like pretty like, how do you say that, blunt, because of that motherfucker. Like it keeps on going. Like in hindsight, I would have removed that motherfucker line from the drop. So it was fine in front of the drop, like a pre-drop vocal, but not, it was a little too profane.
See, I think that's part of what I liked about it, but I think I lived in Chicago for a long time, and there's the like ghetto and booty house stuff that's from around there, and Detroit and all that. Like, so much of that is really, really dirty and profane, and that's exactly what they do. They loop it over and over and over. And so that was
the idea behind it. So it was great that you heard it. That was the influence. But but
it makes it. You're right that it's it's only going to work in certain rooms or environments, of course. But I still liked it. Well, what about as long as we're talking collabs? What about working with DJ Snake? How did that come about?
Yeah, that was great. That was I think 2016 or 17. I was at Amsterdam Dance Event at the Amsterdam Arena. There was a big show there, AMF, and I was standing backstage, and I had this Barong Family bomber jacket I was wearing, and he came to me. He was like, "Bro, I love that jacket. I love that jacket." And I was like, and I recognized him. I was like, "Oh, you're DJ Snake, right? Yeah. Like, who are you?" He's like, "I'm Moksi." He's like, "Oh shit, are you Moksi?" And he was like very hyped to meet me. I was like, the fuck, like I just came on the scene. I was like, what? Like, but I didn't really understand that. But he's like, I really want to work with you guys, and I just exchanged telephone numbers. We started talking on WhatsApp, and he sent me that breakdown idea of those chords with those vocals, which I really liked. I changed the key of the song a little bit, and then I made a drop behind it, which was like a very weird drop for that time. Was Bass House didn't do it like that yet, that was amazing. I remember sending him back the demo, and he was like, "Dude, this has to go on the album." And I was like, "What? I'm going to go on your album?" He's like, "Yeah, with Justin Bieber and with all these fucking crazy people." I was like, "Wow, okay, what the fuck."
Yeah, man. Well, and that too, and that speaking of, making a weird choice where you're not sure if people will support it or not. I mean, that tune I heard everywhere for the next year or more. I feel like every DJ was playing that for a while.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's crazy. And that's the funny thing about it is that I made that song to be really like weird, and the melody was weird, and everything was just off about it, and then it just proves that you always just have to make something that you really like, and then of course you have to make it good and not just you have to produce it well, but it shows. Like, if I look back at all the songs I released, the songs that did best are the songs I had most fun on making. Like the songs I had a trouble finishing, or like I was forcing maybe some things, or the motivation behind it was to get on the radio, or to, all those songs didn't do well compared to the songs I was just fucking around, and I always have to remind myself of that I shouldn't lose that, the intention of how you make a song.
Dude, of course. I mean, this is a question I like to ask on this show a lot, but since you were talking about, finding the fun of it and holding on to that, is there anything you've learned over time to sort of get yourself to that place faster or more strongly? Because I think, in a long enough career, you do what you love, but it becomes your job. And, there's sort of a mix of, fun and stress and all of that. Like, what part of it is the most fun for you at this point in your life? Like, what still makes you excited to do this?
It's a really tough question. I think it's just the love I have for producing music, and I want to keep on having an impact with my songs on people's lives. And I think the combination of those things. And sometimes when I don't have the energy to make music, I just don't make music. So I have moments. I have, like, even last year I had like 2 months. I didn't even go into this room. I just watched series at home, and of course the label and the management said, "Come on, man, what are you doing?" But I was like, "I'm just not feeling it right now. Fuck it. I'm not going to force it." And so that's the reality as well. Sometimes when I'm pressured, I don't make music, but when I do, I always want to have fun. I don't know. I think that's the most motivating part of it.
Well, that makes sense. And I like that you said, too, that when you just don't feel like it, you just don't do it, and kind of trust that the fun's going to come back. I think that's so much better than, forcing yourself to sit down when you're really not in the mood. And like you said, man, if you're not having fun doing it, I think sometimes, you can maybe make yourself sit there and have a breakthrough eventually. But I think so much of it is really capitalizing on and recognizing when you're feeling it, and really being able to execute in those moments, I think is almost just as important as, putting in all the hours.
I think so too. And it's always, I think people, like a producer, shouldn't forget that you became a producer because you liked producing. And I think a lot of guys these days, they put like a certain goal to it, like at the end of that. So I am a good producer when I have a release on here, or when I perform tomorrow at main stage, and then they have reached that goal, and then their motivation or the drive is gone, because it was all connected to those things. And I think producing, you're a producer because it's fun to produce, and you want to be a producer for the rest of your life. It's not based on how big or how fast your release is, or how big the show is you're going to do. So that's all secondary. And I think if you can focus on that as a producer, you will always have fun, and you always maintain the essence of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's worth saying that if you're not having fun at a certain point, it's, if you're able to sort of stop in that moment and ask yourself, well, why isn't this fun right now? And maybe it is what you just said. Maybe it's because you're sort of hanging it all on a goal that hasn't happened yet. Or maybe it's, maybe there's something about your workflow that's gotten stagnant, or maybe, you just need to try something new, or try making a different sound or style, or use a different tool, any of that, just to shake it up, man. Because you're right. If at the end of the day, if it's not fun, there's no point in it. There's a lot of other shit we could be doing that isn't this.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, how did you, speaking of finding the fun in it in general, let me ask about DJing first, and then producing. You said you started DJing pretty young. How young were you?
Okay, if I have to go back to actually my first DJ set, I was 11, I think, and that was
that's pretty young, man.
But it's, I have to nuance it a little bit, because it was at my parents' living room at a birthday party.
Okay,
so it was not like a live show, like a show, but so that was the funny thing is, I became a DJ because my father was a bad DJ.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, my father he had an amazing music collection. He has like a super broad, a lot of CDs at home, vinyl. But he sucked at DJing. Like when we had a crowd over, people were dancing, and then he would play like a ballad because he liked that song, and everybody would sit down. And my mom, she couldn't stand that. She was like, "Samir, go, you take over now. You know the music, his songs, the collection. You're gonna take over." And that was the first time I started playing, and that was when I learned how to the influence of like a vibe in a room and with songs. And I didn't even have two CDJs. I had like one CD player, so I had to like switch the CDs real quick, you know. But that was really fun. And then the funny thing is, I never actually chose to be a DJ. It just kind of happened like that, and just evolved and evolved. I started playing at more parties from my uncle, and then in the local bar, and just it kind of like it just happened.
Yeah. Did you start, when you started doing the little bar gigs and all that, was there did it pay at all? Like, it's got to be nice as a kid just to get a little side money for something you already liked doing, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I made some money back then. Absolutely. Yeah. And it wasn't a lot, but it was enough. I was still in school, so it was just fun, you know? But even back then, I didn't have that dream of becoming a worldwide playing DJ or even a producer. That was never an ambition. It just happened because in the later stadium, I started to play more house music and vinyl, like I said before. And there was a certain point I was like, damn, this music is so dope that maybe I should just give it a go, you know, maybe just try it as well. And I just bought a computer and started making music. And now I can honestly say I'm more of a producer than a DJ. You know, if I have to choose between the two, I'm definitely choosing the producing side. But it's funny that wasn't even a conscious decision. It was just kind of like, maybe I should, you know, try it. And it was never like, I want that, I need that.
This is what we were just saying, man, is that, it wasn't about the long-term, you know, sort of pie in the sky goal. It was just that you really liked this music and you were having a great time doing it. So naturally you want to do more of it and get more involved. And I think that's the way it should always be, ideally. How old were you when you got the computer? Like when you decided to try your hand at producing?
21.
Okay.
Yeah, so that was So and back then there were already kids of like 15, 16 years old in Holland that were making music, and so I felt I was late to the party. I was like, damn, I have to catch up now, you know. but it all worked out. I mean, it took me, I think, 7 years before Moksi was founded, because before that Moksi didn't even exist yet. And so I had 7 years of producing time before I started Moksi, and that was and then everything came together, because before that I had different DJ names and I made Big Room and like Progressive House, and I was just following Hardwell, you know. I was just looking at him, was like, okay, I'm going to try to make that as well, you know, just to learn from producing and stuff. But I was just copying stuff, you know. That was just a school, I feel. And then after 7 years, I had all these influences, all these techniques that I learned from all these other songs that I could finally put into one thing that really was my own, you know?
And once you formed Moksi, how quickly did that take off? Or what was sort of the first big success, or at least something that gave you the idea that maybe this was going to work out?
Yeah, that was we made a song called "Brace Yourself." It was on the first EP, and Yellow Claw played on Ultra worldwide stage, and they were in a live stream, and they played that song, which is absolutely not a typical song for Yellow Claw to play in 2015 when trap music was at its peak, and you know, and then they played like this cool UK based song. But the comment section, I remember, like popped off. They were like, "What is this? This is something else. What is that?" And I looked at Diego, was like, okay, I think we might be onto something here. Like, you know, you felt it. And you felt that the people that listened to the songs were like, they really genuinely liked it, you know, and then you just go for it.
Yeah, no, it's so cool, man. And the relationship with Yellow Claw is probably worth talking about, at least for a minute as well. Did I hear you right that you said one of the Yellow Claw members is actually from the same city as you?
Yeah, absolutely. He's from Venlo too, Jim.
Did you know them prior to, you know, like DJ world?
Yeah, I know Jim from when I started to going out in Venlo. We had these bars, and he played at some of these bars. He was just a hip hop DJ back then, vinyl as well, and we just knew each other from the streets, you know, and even growing up on the streets, you know. Yeah, I always saw him on his bike and shit. We go way back, absolutely way back. Like I think I was eight or nine when I first met him, And that's really cool. And like the funny thing about that Moksi project is that we sent like a demo to him, like, what do you think? Because he just founded Barong Family, and I was like, maybe it fits, or maybe not. And he immediately called me. He was like, dude, this is the shit. You have to make an EP and you have to remix this song, and you have to do, he was like completely hands on. Yeah, he definitely moved mountains for us because he really believed in it. And the hype of Yellow Claw back then was huge, immense. And I mean, it's still big. I'm not trying to say that they're not, but like back then they were in there, in their peak, building up. And then they brought us, like, okay, so this is Moksi. Like, and so it was like a really strong story, and it really popped off right away. I mean, our first show was Tomorrowland.
Oh, wow.
That's to put it in perspective. And, world touring from that point on, nonstop. It definitely has to do with the way it was presented in the scene. And especially because it wasn't presented from the house culture, but from the bass culture.
Yeah, that's a really good point too. They, Yellow Claw were one of the big names in the trap scene at that time, and for them to put on a house music artist to that crowd, that's a really good point, man. To give people something unexpected, something different when you're already established. That's that for any up and comers listening, man. That's a really good sort of concept that I think you could work in a lot of different ways. But I hadn't thought about that. You're totally right.
You have to imagine when we started touring with Yellow Claw in the US, we did the Blood for Mercy album tour. We did the warm up set. And we played in venues. I remember that, like, we came on and then we started playing, and you saw the people like looking at us like, what the fuck are you playing? Like, I came to a trap and dubstep show. Like, we don't want to vibe. Like, back then, people weren't ready for the house thing on that level, that in that scene. And we just kept repeating it. We did a lot of shows with them in the first year of touring in the US. And after a while, you started seeing people catch up. The shows were getting more interesting, and people started to understand like how you actually party on music like that. That was for these people, that was completely new. So I think that the funny thing is, like, we came within the bass culture, we entered the US, and from that, so we've never connected to like any house label, like that. We released on Matt Decent and and all on European labels, but we never like released on Night Bass. I mean, I did now, but not back then or something, So it was a completely different way of approaching it.
Yeah, it's really, really fascinating to think about that, man, because I hadn't put all that together. But you're right. I think sort of coming in from the side door might be a longer road at first, but I really do think it made you stand out in that way. I mean, was it weird? All of a sudden, like, your first show is Tomorrowland, then you're just on a world tour for years all of a sudden. How was that as far as just a change of lifestyle and a change of pace? I mean, just dealing with the new rhythms of that kind of life.
I loved it. Every second of it. Still do. Like, I never would have thought that. I thought in the beginning when it was happening, I was like, ooh, let's see how I will cope, and maybe I will miss my family or whatever, or friends or my life, But I've never looked back, honestly. It's like I am made for this. Like, and I love the traveling. I love the stress, and sometimes I even enjoy being tired, because of it. Because I think, like, how amazing is this? Like, to be real honest, like I know people that work their ass off every day and unhappy with their jobs, and and I feel bad that they are in a position like that. But when I'm living a life like this, I wouldn't dare to even complain about it, or like think that I have a hard time, or there are people in this world that have such difficult lives, and challenging lives, and I mean, I'm a DJ. I play songs for people. I travel the world. I get this attention. I get I get money for it, even, like, and it's just it's still very surreal, but I never take it for granted, but I never want to quit. I think I'll become like I will become the Black Chesto.
Yeah, I was about to say, man. I think he's proving you don't have to quit. You can do it forever.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Oh man, that's funny. I like that you said too, even when you're tired or you're feeling bad, there's still some gratitude for it. Because I relate to that too, man. Sometimes, you're at the airport at 5 a.m. and you haven't slept and you feel like shit. But in my better moments, even then, I'll just be like, this is so crazy that I'm doing that. There's a certain, if I can step out of myself for a second, there really is. I'm still amazed sometimes by where it can take you,
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's just crazy. I traveled to 54 countries in the last 7 years. 54. Like when I say it, I still can't really believe it. It's just amazing. Like I would never let it go. And I understand some people are getting tired, or like they want to focus on private life or social life at home, and I really understand that as well. But not for me.
Well, and like we said at the very beginning, man, I mean, you're living in the town you grew up in, so I'm sure when you're off tour, you can go home and can see family and Absolutely. Sort of remember how it used to be and reconnect to that too. So I think that's probably a smart move on your part as well.
Yeah, absolutely. No, yeah. I agree.
Yeah,
man. It's all about the balance.
I mean, is there those early years of touring when everything was new and you were doing it all for the first time? Do you have any memories from those times? It doesn't have to be like a really crazy story or anything, but just certain memories that run on a loop in your head or that you think about still from time to time from those early years?
Yeah, I mean, of course, I still look back at. I was just talking about the other day with someone that the beginning of Barong Family, that energy that was surrounding that label, that was amazing. Like the Yellow Claw was on their, on their shit, and you had like Weewack coming up, you had Sesco coming up, you had Looney Tunes, you had San Holo, Mike Savello, with all these crazy producers that were really doing something super unique. You had Weewack creating, the Jungle Terror sound, Sesco with this crazy trap music. We were all like pioneering in a way, in some way, and it was just amazing. And sometimes we got together, studio sessions, we did the writer camps together. It was just a very inspiring period to be a part of. I definitely still think back with a full heart. Absolutely.
Yeah, and there's something about those early days of Barong Family. You're making me nostalgic too, because I think all of you had such distinct sounds and distinct identities that it really did feel like just, where did all of these people come from all at the same time, because a lot of times there's label collectives, but oftentimes that label will be putting out a lot of sort of similar sounding music. So even if all the people are very talented, it doesn't necessarily feel as unique. But you're absolutely right, man. All those people you just named at the time when they first came out, every single one, yourself included, was just like, everything was new. That was really exciting from a listener perspective too, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we would just got to get together, and everybody was also very like human. There was no pretense, no arrogance in the room, no ego. And it was just an amazing time. And I learned so much from those oldest producers back then. And I'm really grateful for that. And I still in touch with all of them. So that's great too. And that's funny that when you're traveling the world and you see each other at a festival, you're like, damn, remember we made it,
Yeah, man, look at how far we come. Yeah. I mean, you mentioned Sesco. I had written down the remix he did for your song, The Dopest, which is still, I listened to it again. I hadn't listened to it in a while, and I'd forgotten just how weird it is. It's such a weird song. And it blew up so huge, at least in the States, for the bass scene. Everyone was playing that song too. Do you remember? Yep. I mean, when I mention that song and that remix he did, what comes to mind for you?
The first thing that comes to mind, and as I remember, it wasn't even official release. It was a free download. on SoundCloud, and it had 1 million streams back then, which was crazy.
Yeah.
For like a free download song. Like that was the first thing that came to mind, and also the fact that it's so cool that in the context of that, you're working on one label together, and then he makes a remix of one of our songs as a free download, which really pushes our career forward, but also his, because we've asked him to do that remix. It's like it was the perfect storm, all of those things. Like, so we actually worked on each other's careers in a sense. And that's great if you think about it,
Yeah.
But without that remix, maybe my career would have gone different, not to shit, but, a different direction. And that's great. So I'm very thankful for that. Still.
And his career too, right? I think it's worth saying. It's, again, talking about how Yellow Claw brought you on tour, and you were sort of this different sound that people had to adjust to. And with him as well, like, I think it goes beyond touring. It's when you work on music together or he remixes you. Again, it's like you're opening up a window so somebody else can come into a slightly different world. It's just smart, man. At the end of the day, it's something I wish people would do a little more, is go outside of their own sound a bit more. Because I think not only can you get really interesting results as far as sound and art and creativity, but also, like you're saying, you can expose yourself to other audiences and kind of stretch your boundaries. And just from even a business perspective, that can be really smart.
Absolutely. Yeah, I really enjoyed that.
Okay, last question before I kind of wrap it up here is you had mentioned earlier that you sort of just organically got into this, that it was never your plan from the start to get into this. So there's two questions. One is, what did you think you were going to be doing with your life? Was there some other plan before this really started happening? And two, when did you realize that, this is something that maybe you could take more seriously and could be an actual career path?
Well, there was no plan B. There was just, I was just, a teenager playing songs in clubs and having fun, nightlife. I didn't have any goal besides that. And if that was all, whatever would be, and that would be fine too. I would still enjoy that, playing every week in the same bar with colleagues, that's also fun. So, but the moment I started realizing this really could become something, was actually when I started producing. Then I felt like, okay, this is a purpose now. Like, I have a purpose. I want to be a musician. I want to be a producer. And that was more than just a DJ. Just not to downgrade DJing, but DJing is playing other people's songs, and that's fun. But actually making your own music, that was like really a moment for me. I was like, okay, this is maybe something I should be doing for the rest of my life. And I think that was it. The love for producing saved my life, I guess.
Hey, that's beautiful, man. Yeah. I mean, did your folks understand what you were doing, or were they, what did they think? What did they want you to be doing?
Well, they never really had a preconceived thing they expected of me or something like that. But when I said that I wanted to become a professional DJ, of course, at first I was like, are you sure? But my parents are really supportive, and they were like, if you go for it, don't half-ass it, go for it, don't, and they always supported it, and they're the proudest parents anyone could have. So that's great. But yeah, of course, the people, I remember some friends were like, just don't quit school, like they were like, they didn't really believe it that I could, and I actually quit school.
What were you going to school for? What were you studying?
I was studying theater as a theater technician.
Oh, okay, nice.
So yeah, that could have been a great job as well. So, but I sucked at school because I couldn't listen. I could I love learning, and I read a lot, and I'm very interested in a lot of subjects, but I hated teachers, like the way they talked to me. Like, I couldn't stand the authority. Like, that was a problem. So I guess if I would go to school now, back to school, I would have achieve more. I would be more in my place, because I'm older now and I know how to, interact with people. And back then I
Sure.
couldn't. But,
Yeah. Well, that makes sense, man. I mean, the theater technician stuff is super interesting to me too. When I first went to university, I thought I was going to be a theater major because I had done in high school, I had done, lots of plays and musicals, like acting in them. But through that, I was watching all the technical side people working, and I always found that job really, really interesting, man.
it is, and the culture as well. The people that work there, there's a lot of fun people. It's like a cool atmosphere to be around those kind of people. They're artistic, but also technical. They're, they love details, and it's not that technical. There's a lot of creativity in that world, and I love that. But
it's interesting talking. I mean, because that's what music production is in a way, right? I mean, it's artistic and creative, but it's very detail and technical oriented at the same time.
Yeah, you're right. Absolutely. No, yeah, right. That's kind of the same thing.
Well, hey, man, I don't have much else for you. Is there anything else that we didn't talk about? Anything more about the new album that we should say? Anything else you want to get out there?
No, not really, man. I think we kind of talked through it, and I mean, there's nothing. I mean, the album is out, and people can go listen to it, and and I'm really curious to hear what they think. And no matter what the opinion is, I really love to hear it, because I live by the principle that when I release music, it's not mine anymore. Like, I disconnect a little bit from it, and then. So it's theirs now, like it's the world's, and the people can just do with it whatever they want, and they can hate it, they can love it, they can remix it, or they can, they can do whatever they want with it. And I'm really curious whatever people will do with it, or what they feel, or so I'm really curious to read the comments.
Yeah, man. Well, it's a great album, man. I love, because right before we were coming here to talk, I was listening to sort of your whole discography and all the older songs of yours I had on my hard drive. And it's really cool to see your musical evolution the whole way through, man, because it really does feel like you've been on a path the whole way through. Mm-hmm. And I guess the final question maybe is, do you feel like you're still on that path? Do you have ideas now that you've put this out and it belongs to the world? Do you have ideas for, the next phase, something you want to do in the future, something you haven't tried yet, anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I always wanted to work with, it sounds really weird maybe, but with hardstyle and raw style producers. And it's also very tricky to do that, because it's, of course, the energy and the vibe of the music is so different. But I still hear some similarities in the way they produce their kicks, and I produce my bass lines. It has the same distortion technique. And I still want to try and, do something like that. I'm not sure if it ever will be released or, whatever, but it's just something that's really appealing to me. I went to DEF CON 1 this summer for the first time. It's the #1 hardstyle festival in the world. And I was just blown away by the level of quality everyone's bringing. Like, all the producers, there's no one playing that has one distorted hi-hat. You know what I mean? Right. Everything is perfect, and that's like so impressive. And also the love people have for that genre is really impressive, and that's something I really look up to. And I just want to work with these guys. These are the biggest nerds you can have in the studio. And I can learn from that. And so who knows? There will be like a bass house hardstyle crossover or something. I'm not even sure if it is possible, but we're gonna try it.
I bet it is, man. Yeah, that I would love to hear that. I mean, there's people. My buddy Must Die. I don't know if you ever met Lee Must Die, but he's starting to do a lot of like hardstyle and dubstep productions together, and using a lot of those same distortion techniques and those same kicks, but kind of just putting them in a different context. And it's some of my favorite music he's ever made, man. It's really fucking cool. Yeah,
very cool.
And there's something to the fact, like, seeing that crowd and how into it they are too. you're right that makes me attracted to it as well, because I think maybe just because it's such an extreme form of music that the people who are into it, you know, it really does build this sense of community that, you know, they all share this love for this kind of out there thing, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, they live by it. And so it's a beautiful culture. I really enjoy experiencing it and watching it. And all these producers that are behind it, like Radical Redemption and Bass Modulators, all these guys are so cool. They are very chill and, you know, they have a certain calmness to them. You wouldn't expect that from guys that make music like that. You know, you expect like crazy out there people, but they're all very like nerdy and very intelligent, very like well read, and it's really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, man. No, it's a beautiful thing. That's cool to hear, man. I would love to hear you do that. Well, dude, thank you for taking the time to do this, man. I really enjoyed talking with you, and the album's great, dude. So I'm looking forward to seeing what you do next.
I really appreciate your time, man, and you're a great guy to have a conversation with, and I enjoyed this really well.
Oh,
so
I'm
thank
glad,
you for your time, too.
Dude, anytime. Yeah. Come back anytime, man. And I'll let you go. I know it's late there, so thanks for doing this in the evening too.
No, we're good, man. Thank you.
All right, man. Well, have a good rest of your night. Take care.
Yes.
Dude.
See you later, brother. Bye,
man. Peace out.